in December, there was a request from committee members to bring the bill back for concurrence in this committee. We agreed to that. We are back today not only to hear Senate Bill 1, but also to hear Senate Bill 4, because in the compromise package that we negotiated, we did split the bill into two bills. And so we have two bills before us today, and in that spirit, we are going to hear both bills. Senator Wyland will be a little bit late to the committee. He has specifically requested to be here for the presentation on SB 1. We would like to accommodate him as a member of the committee. So without objection, we're going to begin with SB 4. And we are going to have Senator Huff present on Senate Bill 4.
Senator Lewis is not in the bill.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members. As stated, this is the companion bill now of SBX 51, which Senator Romero will be presenting later. First, this bill, there are a few changes, but we're going to bring it back, and so this is just clarifying some of the changes that have taken place since we last saw this. The bill now clarifies that a student may only transfer unless they transfer to a higher performing school, an amendment which directly aligns with Race to the Top criterion on raising student achievement and worth 30 points in the application. The bill limits the program to just 1,000 schools, similar to the number of schools in Decile 1. In addition to allowing accepting schools to take capacity of programs and space into consideration for acceptance of transfer applications, the bill now authorizes districts to consider possible adverse financial impact as well. That's an issue that's been raised. The bill now has stronger provisions prohibiting discrimination or preferential consideration of a student's athletic or academic ability, family, income, race, nationality, or other characteristics. Amendments now clarify that a district and its decisions to accept or reject students shall not be overturned absent a finding that the district acted in an arbitrary and capricious manner. Amendments were made to ensure that money follows students who decide to attend basic aid districts. Finally, the bill requires an independent evaluation of the program and report by 2014, and further specifies that districts should keep an accounting of transfer requests of English learner students and special needs students and the disposition of those requests. While open enrollment, a simple idea to give parents with students in low-performing schools more public school options, has been somewhat controversial here and other places in the building. This is not new to California. California's community colleges once had district boundaries like K-12 schools today. Over 20 years ago, our community college system turned to open enrollment and dissolved those boundaries. It has served to improve those schools. We also know that at least 18 other states have turned to open enrollment. Some of these states allow all students to attend any district they please, not just limited to a handful of schools. And there will be 2 more that will be joining those ranks. But not one of these many red herrings brought up by the opposition have come to fruition, even in these states already employing open enrollment. What this bill will do is allow parents to be an extra layer of accountability in our schools. The very possibility of a parent removing a child from a certain school will put healthy pressure on those schools and school districts to perform their best and innovate to attract and retain students. Simply put, knowing that all parents have the right of exit if schools don't deliver means schools must work harder to maintain those students and the population enrollment. Aside from the fact that these provisions will serve to improve low-performing schools as Race to the Top calls for, it will also give students the opportunity to be part of reform should their home district not sign an MOU with the state. By transferring to a particular participating school district, students could be involved with some of the innovative and bold reforms school districts are being asked to undertake. SBX 54 also empowers parents to impact change within their district. If 50% of parents in a chronically failing school sign a petition, their school will be subject to turnaround strategies. This is another provision which earns California more points in the application for Race to the Top funds by emphasizing the turnaround of persistently lowest achieving schools.
Senator Huff, can I stop you for just
Yes.
one moment? We believe we have a quorum. Secretary, call the roll.
Romero?
Here.
Romero here. Huff?
Here.
Huff here. Alquist? Hancock? Liu? Liu here. Maldonado? Here. Maldonado here. Padilla? Simidian? Simidian here. Wyland? You have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. Please proceed.
Thank you. As I was stating, this parent trigger helps us become more competitive in the race to the top application. And as before, the trigger mechanism is limited to only 75 schools. Similar to open enrollment, the idea that parents have the ability to sign a petition that will bring change in their school makes the schools a better place. It is the mere leverage that parents will have that will make some of the greatest changes. At the end of the day, parental involvement is irrelevant unless parents have power. XB X54 gives parents those powers necessary to be in charge of the destiny of their local schools. As we should, we stand up for our teachers and our school leaders, but just as significant is standing up for our parents. Today we're asking you to stand up for parents, their rights, and their children, and to not leave these children behind. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Huff. Let's call forth witnesses in support. Please step forward. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Bill Lucia with Ed Voice. We do support the bill. We'd like to point out that it is significantly scaled back from its original version, and yet we do support it. We think it's still a meaningful footprint and an opportunity to really change the culture in the lowest performing schools and ensure that parents have an opportunity to be an agent for change. We also believe that the amendments that were taken based on concerns that had been raised in this committee just a week and a half ago or so are reasonable and do address those issues from the perspective of the District of Enrollment. We also think that the amendment that was taken yesterday in the printed bill requiring that the transfer be of a student to a higher performing school actually helps make the case, and I'm told that the folks working on the state application explicit, if this were to become law, would be using the enactment of this measure directly toward striving for 30 points in the application that are directly connected to increasing student achievement and closing the achievement gap because of the requirement that the transfer can only happen in the District of Enrollment if the District of Enrollment school is a higher performing school. So for those reasons, we do strongly support the measure.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Matt Gray on behalf of Taxpayers for Improving Public Safety. While typically TIPS works on issues surrounding corrections, we believe this bill is a very smart preventative measure because we know that kids who stay in school tend to have better opportunities and tend to not end up in our prison system. So this is a way of making sure that the kids in California, the children, have the best opportunity for the best education, which is one of the best things that we could do for them. And so thank you for bringing this forward, and we are proud to support it.
And if I might just comment, I was very pleased when I read your letter of support. I've long argued that prisons and schools are the flip sides of the same coin, and if we do not educate, we will incarcerate. So issues of corrections, it's good to see the links. Thank you. Next witness.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Edgar Sasueta on behalf of Los Angeles Unified School District. We don't have an official position on this version of the bill. Our district did take a support position on the original SB1, Senator Romero's bill. I can tell you that our board did take action yesterday to approve and sign the MOU, and one thing that came up in that discussion in relation to the bills was the only thing we want to see moving forward is the district still have the ability to push forward some of the reforms that we've been doing already. As many of you know, we have our own public school choice resolution, which we're right in the middle of implementing, and we appreciate Senator Romero, his staff, and all the other parties really looking at the work that LA has done and trying to line up some of the provisions to what's happening in Los Angeles. Secretary Duncan has praised those efforts, and we just want to make sure that we're able to continue those efforts. And with that, we want to see this process move forward, and we appreciate all the work that's been done. Thank you.
And once again, if I might just comment, I know that we've moved quickly. The board hasn't had a chance to act again, but yesterday, after passage by the Assembly, I did receive phone calls from the president of the LA School Board and the vice president of the LA School Board applauding the move from the Assembly.
We're very eager to see this process move forward, and we would look forward to continue to work with all the parties in the implementation process as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Catherine Gaither, Governor's Office of Education. We do not have an official position on the bill. As you know, the governor is very supportive of open enrollment and parent empowerment, and his proposal would have gone much further and would have been a broader group of schools participating, but he is supportive of the ideals of the bill.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good morning. My name is Lydia Grant. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I am an education representative in the City of Los Angeles, a 10-year LAUSD parent volunteer, and most importantly, a parent. My children's middle school is in its 12th year of program improvement. As parents, we've been unable to get our district to listen to the pleas of our parents. We've been kept at bay while our children fail. The parent trigger is a new way of thinking. Please trust the parents to know what is best for our children. Today is a historic day. When you approve this bill, you will be sending a message that parents are supposed to have a seat at the table and be a part of the process. Thank you for all of your hard work and support of the parent trigger.
Thank you. Next witness.
Hello, my name is Ashley Grant, and I'm a student from Los Angeles. I was in the foster care system until the 3rd grade, and by then I was failing every subject. Once I was adopted, my grades improved dramatically, and thanks to my very involved parents, I was able to make something of myself. I am proud to say that I'm now taking honors and AP courses and carrying straight A's. My mother has fought to improve our community schools, and I stand behind the parent trigger so that all parents can help their children get a better education. Thank you so much for your support.
Ashley, and members, I just want to point out that Ashley has been here, I think, since Monday, waiting in the hallways for the committees. Your story is just incredible. When she testified yesterday in committee, she told me afterwards I was nervous. We couldn't have told by just the eloquence of your presentation. Thank you for sharing your life story, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next witness.
My name is Shirley Ford, and I'm with the Parent Revolution. It's kind of hard to follow Ashley. Just almost in tears. I've been with her for the last 3 days, and she's so inspiring. I've been receiving phone calls and emails from parents in Los Angeles, Parent Revolution parents. We are so optimistic that we are on the verge of some real change. And I am the face today and the voice of those parents, and we're asking you to continue this, and let's take this to the top, and let's be competitive, and let's win for our children in the state of California. We appreciate you, and we thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Any other witnesses in support? Is this an appropriate time, especially Senator Simitian? Would you like to ask questions? I know there were particular concerns you had, and it was at your request that we did bring this back today. Is it an appropriate time to ask questions?
I'm happy to hear from all the witnesses in support and opposition before questions. I think that might be more expeditious.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead then go with witnesses in opposition. Please step forward. Good morning.
Good morning. Terry Burns on behalf of Franklin McKinley School District. And I appreciate the administration's hesitance to use the term, but this bill does have cost pressures. For each of the students that transfers, you're looking at about $6,000 that is being duplicated. You're paying for the student in the existing school district, the home district, and the new district. So if one student from each of these school districts transfers, that's a $6 million number that we're looking at that we're going to have to replicate. We also have issues to school districts of money because there will be lawsuits that school districts are going to have to deal with through this process. Our concern is not with the idea of open enrollment. Our concern is that this open enrollment hasn't been fleshed out. We haven't dealt with all of the workings of it. And when folks talk about those folks in Sacramento, they talk about when you do something and don't do it all the way and just say, and you work out the details and you live with the problems for the next 2 years, and then we'll fix them. We'll figure out what they are at that point. But in the meantime, you figure out how to make it work and deal with the problems, deal with the lack of revenue. That's our biggest concern with this piece and why we continue to oppose the bill.
Thank you. Next witness.
Sherry Griffith with the Association of California School Administrators. We, too, oppose the measure. We believe, and for the record, we've said this for both measures, there are only two areas we feel that you need to provide legal authority to apply for Race to the Top at this point, and it is a standards review, which I believe is contained in SB 1, and then identification of the lowest 5%. There are 5 points in the application competition for innovation. We're not as familiar as Mr. Lucia with the 30-point review. We know there's going to be a strict rubric. We think you might get 5 points for this proposal. Secondly, on open enrollment, we have a concern with fiscal, as you've heard already from Ms. Burns. We also have a very serious concern in the measure in the area of priorities. The two priorities for open enrollment in this proposal are, one, the siblings of the students residing in the attendance area of the desired school, and two, those parents in the 1,000 schools that are in this bill. We do not see explicit priority for intra-district transfer students. Those parents within the district, those voting parents who wish to attend another school within their own district. We believe that has to be explicitly required in here, and while there's language that softens that and says there's policies you can develop and make sure that you get your intra-district kids in that list, it is not explicit and legally authorized for the district to ensure they have a priority. We would recommend, if the sponsors would like to ensure parent choice, that after siblings, intra-district enrollment is your second priority, and then parents outside of the district is your third. So for those reasons, we oppose.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Liz Guillen with Public Advocates. We're a nonprofit law firm and legal organization, and one of the ways we describe what we do to community organizations is that we try our best to make rights real, and that is our concern with the open enrollment provisions. The path that this provision has taken, I think, is a good example of how good a policy can become after it is thoroughly discussed and there has been adequate time to review. The two areas that we have greatest concern about the access, real access to parents, has to do with the transportation costs still. We have looked carefully at the NCLB sections that were cited yesterday, and we note that the Title I funding that is available for transportation out of the district is authorized only after that district is identified for corrective action, and the state does one other thing. So hopefully that will be in place for in every district that a parent asks for the transfer. The other issue is the arbitrary and capricious standard. That's a tough standard for anyone to beat, and it really sets up the district's choice as the preference over parents. And for these reasons, we still have grave concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeff Freitas with the California Federation of Teachers, and we oppose this bill for several reasons. The first that I spoke to yesterday was about the collaboration of not only developing of the plan, development of this bill, but also the enactment of this bill. The first part is the Open Enrollment Act. There is an evaluation piece in here, but it does not require that the districts collect the data for that evaluation. It requires the superintendent to do the evaluation, but it is permissive for the districts to collect that data. The second part, in terms of the open enrollment, charter schools are exempted from this. There are 103 charter schools in decile 1, and this is another point where charter schools are being excluded from the accountability of our system. There was added a part in terms of a student has to move to a higher API. Is that a 1-point increase in API? Is that another school that's also labeled as open enrollment? There is not that ban, and this bill or this section, I believe, has those issues with it. The last part I want to talk about in terms of open enrollment is that this is a standalone program. If you look at the current practice in terms of giving students transferability rights within the district, as the previous speaker spoke to, it is in PI1, the first year of program improvement. But as as that school, if they do not increase or the level of achievement has to be increased and they don't get up to that level of achievement, they continue in program improvement, and other factors are involved, including in year 4 and 5, where they have to develop a model and have a turnaround program. This does not. This is a standalone. This is an end process. The other part of this bill, the parent trigger, there are no details in the bill about the parent trigger, about what is 50%. Do we calculate all the feeder schools? There's a lot of questions. Do both parents, if a student has 2 parents, do both parents get a signature? And how does that number get calculated? The more important part of this piece is that it is very divisive. It can be very divisive. It can pit parents against parents in school districts and schools, and can pit parents against teachers. And one of the reasons, one of the focuses behind Race to the Top is collaboration. And this is just the opposite of that collaboration. A better program would be to get parents involved in the school district, involved in the school, working with the teachers, working with the principals, and actually developing a system for them to turn around, as opposed to doing an initiative process and imposing on everybody, including the other 50% of the parents, what happens to that school. If this bill is passed, whether it is actually written in the state plan by the governor or the superintendent, we would have to believe, CFT would have to believe that this is part of the state plan to move forward with Race to the Top. With that, I would ask for your no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Debbie Lookin, California State PTA. We do not have an official position on this bill, but we do have some serious concerns. Obviously, we are very much in favor of the idea of parent choice and student choice, and students having the opportunity to have the best possible education. However, we're concerned about an empty promise, whether this bill has the ability to really deliver what it's suggesting to parents. We're concerned, as Ms. Gwillan of Public Advocates mentioned, around issues of transportation, concerned around issues of financial impact, whether students are going to be turned away when they're special needs or English language learners because they bring high costs with them and may not bring along the attendant funding. So certainly concerned about whether or not we're delivering something to people that is not going to achieve what it's meant to. In terms of the parent trigger, we certainly feel that the idea has some merit. We certainly want to see parents have meaningful involvement in their school, but a trigger in itself is not going to do that. We need to see a system in place where schools are required or directed to meaningfully involve parents, provide them with the support and the understanding, opportunities to collaborate to ensure that their schools improve. So we remain very concerned with the provisions of the bill.
Thank you. Next witness.
Erica Hoffman on behalf of the California School Boards Association. In brief, I will associate myself with a number of the remarks already said, especially those by Ms. Burns with regards to the financial impact on the districts. I did kind of want to raise one other issue with the parent empowerment provisions that has not been talked about yet. CSBA does support parent involvement. We believe that it needs to occur both at the school site level and at the district level. However, we're very concerned about the language that's in this proposal, in that it basically doesn't make a distinction between a district that is simply failing annual yearly progress, AYP, because you can do that for a number of reasons. You can do it because you're missing a subgroup on a special education test. The reality is, what this doesn't do is it doesn't focus on the fact that the schools that are stagnating, the schools that are declining, are probably the ones that most need some of this parental involvement and the parental push. This bill does not make that distinction. This bill simply says that if you're under an 800, parents can pull this trigger for the 75 schools, and we do have a concern with that.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good morning, Roberta Ferger with Pico, California. We do not have a formal position on the bill, but I do want to speak to the parent empowerment section. We are strong advocates for the ongoing role of parents in schools, the partnership with parents to improve schools, and really believe that's a critical component of sustaining improvement in our lowest performing schools. We have recommended over time that the trigger The petition actually trigger design teams that are comprised of stakeholders from throughout the school community that sit together in a thoughtful process, look at options, and recommend with power to implement those options. We think that builds capacity, that builds a shared vision for the school, and that's how you sustain reform over time. With that not being an option, or if that were not considered, we do feel that the current trigger could be strengthened considerably by making sure that information is provided to parents, a public hearing that says which schools are available or accessible for the trigger, a meeting at the school site that explains to parents what the petition process is and says what their options are for transforming schools. So if someone hands them a petition, they have some context with which to sign it. And the last thing is that school districts include on their websites information about this, so it's broadly accessible, at least to folks who have internet access. Thank you very much. And the last point I guess I just want to make is that the trigger is a one-time act. It does not really provide for ongoing, meaningful partnerships with parents. And if that's what we're really looking for, we need to think about how we do that in a sustained and meaningful way over time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Steve Henderson, representing the California School Employees Association. I will associate myself with the remarks of previous speakers, especially those centered around the lack of transportation funding and the fiscal impact to districts.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good morning. Martha Zaragoza Diaz, representing the Californians Together Coalition, and we had an oppose unless amended on SBX 54. Therefore, we continue with our position on SBX 5, the previous bill to this bill. We have two major concerns. One is with regards to the emergency regulations that's being called for, specific to the open enrollment provisions. We believe because this is such a significant provision with many serious impacts and implications on the districts and on the children and parents, that we should utilize the regulatory process, the regulatory process, and not the emergency process, because the emergency process won't give us public stakeholders, we believe, sufficient time to really take a look at the regulations that are being recommended under the emergency regs. We don't understand why you're rushing to do this. We believe that the emergency regulation process is not required. Our second concern relates to the parent trigger, specific to those parents that may not be sophisticated enough to be able to navigate this process, parents that aren't members of a formal parent group, especially parents who do not read, write, or speak English, who may not receive this information in their language. We're very concerned that without the proper notices in languages other than English, and without some type of orientation, training, etc., that these parents will get lost in the process, especially those parents in the persistently low achieving schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the committee? Senator Liu?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I wanted to thank you very much in the Education Committee for all of the work as this bill has evolved.
Do you want to see my bruises?
Yes,
and sort of
I know you must have spent hours, very painful hours, trying to accommodate. And indeed, I think we have made some movement toward satisfying some of the issues regarding parent involvement and open enrollment. But I still feel that, unfortunately, that there's still much more room to move. And one of my concerns this morning happens to be with the parent involvement part of it, and I think the last person that was up here really articulated the trigger and the lack, especially for folks who have language issues, English language issues, and the education, the sophistication that needs to be involved in the process. Is there anything in the bill that permits any kind of training or education to elevate a sophistication so that decision-making is more collaborative and intelligent about the needs, to address the needs of their kids?
You experts down there, get in.
Jeannie Orpeza, Department of Finance. There's nothing in the bill that provides for that. However, if it's a school that has a significant number of English learners, there are monies, federal monies, and they require to have parent involvement groups to make decisions at the school site level, as well as an economic impact aid that also requires there to be a parent group. And to some extent, I mean, I could want to verify, but I believe that those programs do have some training and outreach to get the parents to come in and be part of the school site decision making.
I know, but it seems to me that there's kind of a piling on of Title I monies, other monies that have been ongoing, trying to address student transportation, student parent involvement, that the bill doesn't quite articulate, separates out what really needs to happen here if we're really going to try to address the low achieving needs of these students. You know what I mean? It's like it's a double counting of dollars. And I don't know, so yes, maybe there's in Title I monies, if there are monies for this and that, and they're used for that purposes. But then how then does it move over to what we need to address here in the RTT bill?
Catherine Gaither, Governor's Office of Education. The 4 transformation models that are specified in Race to the Top and School Improvement Grant Guidelines, if they are either a transformation model or the turnaround model, they both include components that require parent and community involvement. So if there is a parent petition that's successful and they're using one of those 4 turnaround models, then that would be part of that process, and it's required that they do that as part of their community and parent involvement in their turnaround and transformation. And in that case, then clearly they can use the school improvement grant funding for that, and that is an ongoing grant. And so there are funds available, and there are, at least the vision from the federal guidelines is that parents be very involved in those transformations.
Yeah, no, I understand that because I've had schools in my district that we've had principals not wanting to use those monies, and not wanting to encourage community parent involvement, and we've had to go on and fight for that kind of transformation. But how does it apply to these particular to the new what you're trying to propose here for RTT?
Madam Chair, to answer your question, Senator Liu, what this bill would provide is in concert with everything, since RTT is layered by President Obama and Secretary Duncan on the framework of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Yes. And since these schools are subject to program improvement, there is a notice to parent requirement, as you know, right, in the ESEA. And I'm reading literally from ESEA that the local education agency shall promptly provide to a parent or parents in an understandable and uniform format and, to the extent practicable, in a language the parents can understand, of each student enrolled in an elementary or secondary school identified for school improvement, for corrective action, or for restructuring, and these are the schools that we're talking about, an explanation of what the identification means, how the school compares in terms of academic achievement to other schools, the reasons for the identification, an explanation of what the school identified for the school improvement is doing to address the problem of low achievement, an explanation of what the local education agency or state education agency is doing to help the school address the achievement problem, an explanation of how parents can become involved in addressing the academic issues that cause the school to be identified for school improvement, an explanation of the parents' options to transfer their child to another public school. What parents are saying is that these provisions exist in the federal law. This LEA has been receiving Title I monies. The parents, in some cases, today, the State Board of Education is meeting, and English language learner parents in Tahoe Truckee are fighting because they've been told that the white parents get the transfer and the Mexican American parents don't. And they're saying enough. That's not what the law provides for, and they're getting informed well enough through these notifications. And what this bill would do in those notifications is require that in addition to the notifications of everything up until this framework with the SEA, that the RTT provisions also be incorporated in that parent notice so that they will know in the language as much as practicable that they can understand all these specific provisions. And the parent trigger provides for simply that if the parent requests the transformation model that the parents propose through the petition does not get approved by the local school board, it simply says that they have to finally, once and for all, in writing, pass a motion and say, this is what we are going to do to comply with federal law and to be compliant with federal law, as opposed to just say, well, we're taking the Title I money and nothing's going to happen. In fact, right as we speak today, the State Board of Education is wrestling with what do they do with districts in corrective action, and is the state going to follow through with its fiduciary responsibility, knowing that next month there's going to be an inspector general coming out from the U.S. Department of Education to see if California is compliant in its oversight responsibility to make sure that LEAs are making sure that schools are doing what they need to be doing and notifying the parents about their rights. And what parent groups are saying is that these provisions have been in law for 7 years. And their voices are not being heard when they want to be engaged, because I could read further, but in this section, it requires that parents be stakeholders at the table. And what they've been saying is they don't feel like they're being included, they're being shut out. And in some communities, verbally, they're being told, you don't have the right skin color.
Thank you. Other questions, Senator Liu?
I'll be back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee?
Madam Chairman, I have to point out a comment that was made in the opposition that, just to clarify, on page 12 of the bill, there's an issue of the priority in the priority of transfers in the open enrollment provision of the bill. And there was the illusion that somehow this was ambiguous and that intra-district transfers, meaning within the district transfers, would be disadvantaged as a result of this open enrollment. And I'd like to point out that on page 12, there's a mandatory requirement. There's a mandate. The word shall begins on line 3. You can see the first word on line 3 is shall. And it says that in order to provide priority enrollment opportunities for pupils residing in the school district, that means resident pupils, that means the universe that would be subject to an intra-district request of their LEA, the district of enrollment shall, not may, but shall, establish of a period of time for resident pupil enrollment prior to accepting transfer applications pursuant to this article. So anything that follows after that is a second priority automatically. So the concern that was raised by the opposition is already addressed in the framework of the legislation.
All right. Seeing no other questions from the committee, or Senator Liu, you had indicated you wished to be back.
I just wanted to make sure that you feel that the trigger is adequately addressed in this bill, because what you described is exactly what is happening, and I'm not convinced that the bill really ensures that this happens for the communities that we're talking about.
This will be, for the first time, parents will actually be told, you're in one of these schools, these are the options available to you really, and that you actually have an opportunity to go and sign a petition. And there will be information, and there are required public hearings on
Yeah, I know they're required public hearings.
So the answer is yes. It hasn't happened now, and we're all concerned about it not happening now. This is what's being offered, is something to do it differently and to see what happens with a finite number. It's not an unlimited number, it's a finite number, and there have been people, and in the negotiations over the last 2 weeks, there was concerns. There were some parties in the tri-party and multi-party negotiations that wanted this to be an unlimited number, a bigger number, double the number, 150 instead of 75, and people have said, let's look at 75 and see what happens.
Senator Liu, I see again one of our former witnesses stepped forward. Would you care to address this issue? Once again, re-identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Lydia Grant, and I'm a parent from Los Angeles. In our community, with LAUSD doing their new school reform movement that's been going on there, we had started at collecting signatures already from our community members and parents of our school. The communities are so excited to have this option that we have parents from every economic group, from every language is spoken. We have parents stepping up and saying, you know, I'll get to my people, I'll go to my church. I mean, the parents are coming out of the woodwork to volunteer. They're so excited. And it doesn't matter what race or color. I actually come from a predominantly Hispanic area, and we have people speaking Spanish. Our flyers are in Spanish. The parents want what's best for the kids. It's not about excluding anybody. And one of the issues I know with the open enrollment has been such a big issue. The parent trigger is a counterbalance to that, because it gives the parents who stay in their home schools the power to do something about it and make those better too.
Okay, I'm going to intervene at this moment. Let me just say it's 9:45. We do need to move to the state of the state. Senator Simitian?
Yes, Madam Chair, when we come back, I will have some questions.
All right. Then maybe what we will do then is let's go ahead and just recess until after State of the State, and we will pick this up as the first order of business when we return. Immediately after State of the State, we'll go ahead and put the call out. So we will all be back. Okay, the Education Committee stands in recess.